Martha, in this podcast, we're going to hear you being insulted, yeah?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Well,
Aggressively insulted.
yeah, does that happen to you often in this job?
Not too often, but, has happened in the past. I feel like I talk a lot about being a sports journalist, but there was one occasion when I was speaking to a player in the mix zone, so that's like the tunnel that they come down after they've walked off the pitch. And he came over and he's carrying his small child in his arms. And I thought, looking as you do as a journalist for a little bit of human connection. And I said, "Oh, your little boy, he's so sweet. How old is he?" And the player just stared me down and said, "Just get on with asking the questions, yeah?" Which cut me down to size somewhat.
Yeah, I interviewed Sean Connery once.
Yeah.
And I said to him, in Scotland, in Edinburgh, I said, "Shouldn't you live here before you tell the people of Scotland how to vote?" And he looked at me and he said, "I've probably got more to do with Scotland than you have." And I said, "Well, I've lived here for 35 years. Tells you how long ago it was." He leaned in and he said, "You look a shite older." I'm James Matthews.
And I'm Martha Kelner.
You're listening to day 67 of Trump 100, a day that was coming in Signalgate, when the details discussed in that chat group were finally published.
Some of the central characters have been quizzed again on their part. Quite the spectacle. It might be the shiftiest thing you've seen in your life.
Speaking of which, Martha, you have been Marjoried, is that right?
Yeah, I think you've been Marjoried before, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene we're talking about, the representative from Georgia. I had an exchange with her and I wouldn't exactly call it cordial.
When Martha met Marjorie, there's much more of that, and we'll play it for you. Well, Martha, our day began as it always does. Good timing. The sound, of course, of the group chat, the DC Bureau chat, unclassified. Basically, our kind of plan for the day happens every morning. To quote it this morning, no immediate plan for a TV report, but if anything develops on the Atlantic story, it will turn into one. Safe to say, Martha, it did.
I certainly did. We'd heard the line, hadn't we, from the Trump administration saying there was no classified information on the Signal group chat. That's what the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and the CIA Director, John Ratcliffe, told at a Senate committee hearing.
Yeah.
The question was, would The Atlantic magazine publish the details they had so we could all judge for ourselves? The answer to that question was yes.
Yeah, they published a series of screenshots that contained details. To give you a flavour, one message from the Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth, said, 12:15 Eastern Time, F-18s launch first strike package. 14:15, strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop. 15:36, F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched.
Yeah, it's a running commentary, isn't it? Before, during and after the strike on the Houthi rebels. There was one interesting line that came post-strikes, which said that they'd got one of these guys coming out from his girlfriend's house. Incredible detail. Mm-hmm. I guess the question is this a war plan? Is this an attack plan? There are military people queuing up to say, yes, that is exactly what these texts are. They are war plans, attack plans, and they are definitely classified information. We spoke to retired Major General Randy Manner. He served his country around the world for more than 30 years. Well, listen to what he calls it.
If any of my officers or anyone who worked for me had revealed the information that was on that Signal app, their security clearance would have been immediately revoked, and it is very likely that they would have been facing charges and or have been retired. It is critical information that we cannot tolerate that kind of exposure of our intelligence. Unfortunately, this administration has a lack of accountability. Whenever things go wrong, the first thing you do is deny it or say that it's a lie. Same thing as Joseph Goebbels had always said, if you tell a lie once, no big deal, but you got to keep on telling it and people will eventually believe the lie.
I covered the first Gulf War. I remember, Martha, in being in Saudi Arabia. Actually, there was a reporter reporting live alongside me, kind of rival competitor. Mm-hmm. Behind him, planes were taking off. And I remember his report, his line was, and there they go, the dogs of war. And what a bulldog breed they've turned out to be. I mean, and I thought, ooh, cheesy. But so that was a bit of a laugh. But the military guy who was kind of monitoring the media sprinted up to him. And he said, if I had a gun, I would shoot you myself. His worry was that the Iraqis would be watching that plane leaving
Yeah.
in Baghdad. They're thinking, okay, that'll be here in
Yeah.
about 25 minutes. They'll have their guns trained on the sky. So yeah, that's the military concern. Yeah, and the Houthis, they're no ragtag bunch of terrorists. This is a proper military unit. So yeah, on one view, it's an attack plan top to bottom. Only not so much if you listen to some of the protagonists, people who were on that chat, Tulsi Gabbard, John Radcliffe, directors of national intelligence and the CIA. We heard again from them today. They were grilled for a second day running, this time by House representatives in Congress.
My testimony is I did not recall the exact details of what was included there.
That was not your testimony. Your testimony was that you were not aware of anything related to weapons packages, targets, and timing.
As the testimony yesterday continued on, there were further questions related to that, where I acknowledged that there was conversation about weapons, and I don't remember the exact wording that I used, but I did not recall the specific details that were included.
You can form your own view here as to whether they're telling the truth or not, but what you can't argue with is that they're clearly putting their wagons in a circle, aren't they? Deny, dispute around what's classified and what's not. And again, the trashing of the journalist, the editor of the Atlantic magazine, Jeffrey Goldberg, who was included on that group chat. He's been called a sleazebag by Donald Trump. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has equated him to a journalist trying to make a name for himself. Never mind the fact that this guy's an incredibly well-respected journalist who's been around for decades. I went to Capitol Hill to gauge the view of Congress people. I came across Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Okay.
You might have heard of her. I think you've had a run-in of your own.
The once, memorable, but maybe not as memorable as your exchange.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, for people who don't know, very close to Donald Trump. She's one of the most aggressive readers of the Trump playbook and someone he listens to. Representative, another story that relates to the media today. Have you seen the new information revealed by the Atlantic magazine about the signal texts?
We're talking about NPR and PBS, not the Atlantic.
But do you believe that this was classified information that was shared on that
No,
group?
the administration has said it is not classified information. I think this is a continuance of someone like you to try to push an issue that isn't even relevant, and I think that we're carrying on. Thank you.
Detail of timings and weapons, is that not classified information?
Yes. Yeah. Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you from?
From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No. You should care about your own borders.
Do you care about American lives being put at risk?
Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care about
No, do you care? Okay, you're
Do you
done.
care about American lives being put at
You
risk?
wanna know, I don't
About
care- I
service
don't-
members fighting for your country?
I don't care
and
about
your
your
Vice
fake news.
President
Do you have
and your
any
Defence Secretary?
Yeah, this is an American journalist. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asked.
I'm not answering her question
All right, I'll
because
ask
I
it.
don't care about her network. If you would like to ask, I can
Do
answer.
you have any concerns whatsoever about the complete disregard of operational security from the top level of this administration?
You want to know about complete disregard about operational security? You should talk about the Biden administration and how they ripped our borders open to terrorist, cartel, child sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking across our borders for 4 years. The Trump administration is doing a great job, and I stand by their statements.
So you have
I
no-
stand by
no
their
comment
statements.
whatsoever about
My comment to you
this
is I'm
incompetence.
thankful to President Trump that he is leading us out of wars, that he's ending the war in Ukraine, where American lives could have been killed if Joe Biden was still president
talking about
today,
him
whether he liked it or not. We're talking about NPR and PBS today. We're talking about fake news that was funded with federal funding from American taxpayers. That's what this is about today, not journalists from the UK.
A journalist is being vilified for exposing failings in the way that your government conducts itself. Is that not that journalist doing a good job? Does Defence Secretary Hegseth need to resign over this, Representative?
Absolutely not. He's doing a great job.
He's doing a great job, but he was putting American service members' lives at risk.
Your country's going to put
This is
deflect lives fighting a war in Ukraine that's not even a member of NATO.
Is this an exercise in deflection?
This should be an exercise in you worrying about your own country.
A lot of people describe Marjorie Taylor Greene as an attack dog, and she's certainly a very vociferous defender of Donald Trump and Trumpism and MAGA politics. But she is reflective of the way of thinking at the heart of government and the way that they are approaching crisis management, which is attack, discredit, deny, try and create confusion around the story. And she wasn't the only one delivering the robust nothing to see here. Every screen you looked at today, every network television channel, there was a member of government trying to bat away this scandal. You had J.D. Vance, didn't you, in his military-style jacket. It's fair to say that more strikes on Yemen would be consistent with the military strategy that they were pursuing earlier this month. But would it be cynical to suggest that it's a PR strategy to distract from the current scandal? Maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah, Martha, let me reassure you that we give a crap about your opinion and your reporting before we go any further.
I was feeling quite bruised.
But the thing is, nobody's been sacked, despite loud calls for it in all of this. When you listen to Trump administration officials, there are, as you say, full-throated denials, attacks on the media, an effort to steer the agenda elsewhere. Their audience principally is Donald Trump himself. I think we're in a post-truth political climate. For a lot of people, the truth is what you're told by your side. But even in that reality, I think there has to come a breaking point. Donald Trump's got big players standing by him through a period of turmoil, the politicians, the financial people, the tech businesses, present at the inauguration, and so on. What we're seeing here is incompetence, embarrassment laid bare in a very visible way. I think you would think there has to come a point where no government can withstand scandal of this sort and to this degree, because it is America downgraded, certainly in the eyes of the wider world, being seen to have unserious people in extremely serious positions.
Let's talk about Jeffrey Goldberg again. Though. You mentioned him earlier. He's the Atlantic magazine's editor-in-chief. He's someone who's emerged as the villain of this piece in MAGA-land. He was the one who was included in that Signal group chat. The White House has launched a full-scale assault on him in their efforts to rubbish the story and make it go away. But he and Trump have history, don't they?
They do, yeah. He's been running the Atlantic since 2016. Previously, Jeffrey Goldberg, he wrote for the Washington Post and the New Yorker. The Atlantic, it's an old magazine founded in 1857, and in its long history has only ever endorsed 5 candidates for president: Republican Abraham Lincoln in 1860, Democratic President Lyndon B. Johnson. It's never been a fan of Trump. In his 3 election campaigns, it endorsed his 3 opponents. Jeffrey Goldberg, you'll remember, Martha, the story in 2020, he broke the tale of Donald Trump referring to dead American soldiers as suckers and losers.
Yeah, this was a huge story and really got under the skin, I remember, of Donald Trump at the time. Goldberg had said that Trump decided against visiting a cemetery for American soldiers killed in World War I during a visit to France in 2018 because the rain would have messed up his hair and because he didn't deem it important to honour the dead.
Do you know who Moxie Marlinspike is, Martha?
Oh, God. There's always some trivia in this podcast and I never know the answer.
Well, I know the answer because I'm looking at it. He's the founder of Signal.
Okay.
It's all about the Signal. Let me read you his post on X. There are so many great reasons to be on Signal, now including the opportunity for the Vice President of the United States of America to randomly add you to a group chat for coordination of sensitive military operations. Don't sleep on this opportunity. Well,
that's the way to respond to a scandal, isn't it?
The question is, does Donald Trump know what Signal is? What do we think?
I'm fairly certain that Donald Trump has no idea what Signal is. Certainly some of his comments today suggest he might not understand it. He did an interview on a video sharing platform, Rumble, today. He said, somebody in my group either screwed up or it's a bad signal. It's a bad signal, happens too. But it seems to be maybe came in with a staffer and it was by accident. So I'm not quite sure he knows what a signal is or what a bad signal is. I heard him describing Signal as a device
Right.
yesterday. He does. I don't think he knows it's an app that you download. Onto
Yeah,
your
probably
phone.
thinks it's a wireless or something. In fact, he probably does things like makes actual telephone calls.
Yeah.
How old school would that be? He's a man who doesn't appear to communicate via digital methods at all. Legal filings and conversations with his aides, they kind of paint the picture of somebody who doesn't use email or even text messages, and apparently doesn't even have a computer at home. You'd assume he's got one in the Oval Office, but we do know now that he's got a telephone, a TV. Of course, the question is he a podcast listener?
He's still got time to get into Trump 100.
What do you think the chances of that are?
33 days to go, Donald. Come join us. And on that note, that's all for day 67 of Trump 100. Please do remember to send us your questions at trump100@sky.uk.
Yes, we'll answer these questions at the weekend. And also, if you'd like to share your thoughts on any of our Sky News podcasts, we have a short survey on listening habits. You can find that link in the episode description.
Thanks very much for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow for day 68.
All the best.